I always skew towards get as close to the harsh winds of competition for the sales of your organization, because the entire organization is sales. All of it is. I mean, you've got the bloody tip of the spear, and anyone that's not out within sales, customer facing with new people delivering our products is the wood behind the spear. And I want them to feel that wood. I want them to feel the weight behind them. Make your organization as close to that as possible, because the internal tension between, salespeople are throwing us bad people and salespeople saying we need better products or you need better follow through, you need better whatever. That internal fighting is a cancer. If you can come to an agreement on we are a sales organization and we are going to have alignment as close as possible, that people that are feeling those winds out there of competition and the change in the market can be absorbed and metabolized by the organization as a whole, you will see great changes on both top and bottom line.
This is Country Club Conversations. I'm Raj Tut, founder and CEO of Storyboard Living. This show gives you actionable insights from the hard-to-reach top percentile in business and entrepreneurship. I think everyone deserves this type of access, and I'm bringing it to you. Welcome to the club. Kevin, thank you for being on the show.
Good to see you, buddy.
For the second time.
Yeah, here we go. Second time's better, right?
Yeah. So you're the founder of Mantality Health. You have 9 locations in 7 states, a very successful business, also an online presence that allows you to service the entire country. By the way, are you also servicing or looking at servicing other countries as well, or just the U.S. for now?
No, just U.S. right now. Yeah, we have mostly because of the product control. We know the quality we're getting. We know the timing. We know that the product our clients are getting are the actual FDA approved, manufactured. They're getting exactly what they're supposed to get.
And when you say product control, can you go into detail on the types of products you offer? And after that, I would like to jump into your background and your story.
Yeah. Well, we're in men's health, so it's about performance. So I always I'm 53. I look at, wow, if I had the energy that I did when I was in my 20s, but now knowing what I know in my 50s, and that's what we do for guys. Naturally, guys' testosterone is going to slowly drop over time, and what happens is like taking the dial on their energy and dialing it down. Your mental focus, your sleep, your physiology, everything just starts to slow down and you feel really sluggish. And the number one complaint that guys have when they come to us is like, man, I just don't care that much anymore. I don't care how I look. I don't care that I'm not where I want to be. I don't want to get up and play with the kids. I just kind of, and their spouse is like, who is this person? Actually more than half of the forms online filled out, getting information from us are from spouses. Wives are like, hey, can you help this cat out? Like, this is not the guy that I married. And it's not out of, hey, I'm done with him. It's a matter of, they can feel like, wow, he's down. What can I do to help him? So the products we provide are things that are going to restore their natural hormone balance. For some guys, that's bringing down their estrogen. For some guys, that's bringing up their testosterone. For some guys, it's a little bit of that balance. For me, it was treating my sleep apnea, and that restored my hormone levels back to normal. So it's finding out what the root cause is that's dialing that down and then restoring them back where they need to be.
You mentioned focus. To me, you're a very focused and disciplined person. Can you give us some background in terms of how you grew up, where you grew up? I think some of it is probably innate, but some of it may be a product of how you came up.
Yeah, I think more of it is a product how I grew up than innately. Grew up on a farm, basically a farm business. We ran a grain elevator. My dad did. He took over it from his dad when he was 15, when his dad passed away. And so my dad ran it, and then my brothers had bought it from him. Now their sons are working in the business. And so it's been a great and thriving business that they've all managed really well. So I am a product of the environment that I was fortunate enough to be born into. There's uniqueness in that there's seasonality of the work. When it's harvest time, you got to work. You work, you get it in, you get it from the field, and you get it done. And so as the elevator, we were always busy during that time of year bringing that in. And then wintertime, there was less to do. Springtime, again, we get busy with planting and fertilizer and those types of things. But for us, working within a family business, it was just part of, this is what you do. We started at a certain age, we worked there, we got paid for the work we did, and then we helped pay our own way. So I've always had a great sense of independence that was built into that sense of money management and the value of a dollar. Those were all things that are not innate. I believe they're really learned. And just observing that when I grew up really hardwired it into me.
You'd like to say that you're unemployable?
Yes.
Is that a factor or a function of the way you grew up working kind of for the family business and working for yourselves on a farm versus having maybe your typical teenage jobs at, let's say, a fast food joint?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd asked my mom. My mom's been gone several years now, but I asked her because my dad and his brother ran this business. And out of with 9 brothers and sisters, many of us run our own businesses. We just have, and that's all we've ever done. Where in contrast, with my uncle, who's my godfather, and his 7 kids, they all high degrees, great jobs, engineers and VPs of insurance companies, and just a great, close-knit, tight family. But we grew up working the same jobs, doing the same thing. So there was something different between our table and their table. And I'd asked my mom what that was. And she was like, they really pushed, get an education, really move yourself forward in that way. And my dad was very focused on find an opportunity, do the hard work, get it done. In reality, a combination of those is a really powerful tool. So at the end of the day, they're hardworking and scaling up, but we are more doing the same, but running our own industry. And there are times where I'm like, I made the right choice. And there's times I'm like, I went down the wrong path. So, which is the life of an entrepreneur. But the unemployable part is I want to run the show. And that's just kind of the way that we are, and that many of my brothers and sisters are. We're just very much take charge. We're going to run it. We're going to take care of it. And I don't know. I remember conversations when I was younger I remember my dad when someone had got a job. I think it was Monsanto is what I remember, but I doubt if that's what it was. But someone said, yeah, they got a job at Monsanto. And, ooh, yeah, they can move you. They can downsize you. It's good company, but I was like, ooh, I'm never going to get a job. Like the risk of turning that much of your freedom over to somebody else, that sat with me. That it really did. And something that I tell my kids and anybody I spend time with, whatever you're going to do, what you're looking for is relative income, which is money and time to enjoy it. So if I would pay someone $1 million, but you're going to work 7 days a week, 15 hours a day, what's the point? Or if you had zero income and you had all the free time, there's not much that you can do. What you're looking is relative income. And the income is based on the problems that you solve. And so if you solve big problems, odds are you're going to get paid big amounts for that. That doesn't necessarily always take a lot of time, but people many times pick the careers they go into because it's fulfilling for them. So for me, the stuff I do within my company now, I love doing. That's the problem solving, that's bringing order to chaos, that's finding where we can take and scale. And that's not a real employable position. That's just not one, which we are who we are. So
I'm sure it took you a while for you to figure out, exactly how you wanted your life to look, your company to look. And it seems like you're in an ideal position today, especially with the size of your company, the freedom you have, working on the business instead of in the business. When did you first decide you didn't want to be on the family farm, you wanted to be in some other sort of business or other entrepreneurial venture? And also, how did you end up in St. Louis?
Yeah, great question. So when I had gone to college, I always felt like I wanted to do something. A small town was a great place to grow up, to learn those values. But I really wanted to get into some bigger markets. And I just really enjoyed all the things. I mean, I'm 5 minutes from a McDonald's where I live right now, and it used to be 40 minutes from where I grew up. And that to me it's not the main reason, but it played a big role. Everything from movie theaters to culture to sports are things I'd always enjoyed. And I didn't feel like I was missing out when I was younger, but when I started to experience those, I was like, I would love to have both. I would love to have the values and the hard work and all of those things that I valued so much growing up, but also have access to all of these things. As I went to college, those things had evolved for me that I really wanted to stretch out and to go into that. And when you move to a place, where the town I grew up in is about 200 people, when you move to a town that's bigger and suddenly it feels small, What happened? The town didn't get any smaller. What happened was your view. You just stretched your view around what it was. So by the time I had moved from Lincoln, Nebraska, and then I moved to St. Louis, that just kept stretching until St. Louis feels like a very small town now, which is good that your perspective changes on it. So from there, I really wanted to see how I could, expand and live a life like that, that would have the access to all the things I truly enjoy.
Your first business right out of college, I think, was driveway sealing. Is that right?
Yeah.
And how did you decide that was the business you were going to start? It seems like it didn't have much of a connection to your education.
Yeah, none. The work we did when I was growing up was not glamorous. And some of the jobs were smelly. A lot of them were hard. They were dirty. People avoid those things. I don't mind it. I don't mind getting dirty to this day. I mean, we'll go out and we'll work in the yard, and there's nothing better than getting dirty, sweating, taking a shower and cleaning up. You just feel like, something was done. So for me, I'd never seen blacktop driveways. They don't have those where I came from. I'm watching someone out there sealing their driveway and realizing that how often do you have to do this? Just talking to him, he's like, well, you're supposed to do it every year, but man, it's a pain and you've got to get this done. And I saw somebody that was running a business like that. And I just talked to them for a bit and they were telling me what they did and where they got their supplies. And one of the lessons that I learned early on is if you find someone that's running a successful business, if you go and talk with them, they're incredibly supportive. It's a big sandbox. Every business that I have ever been in, I've went, talked with somebody that's in it. They've opened the door. They've helped and share with me whatever they can do. And most all of them are still great connections to this day. Whenever anyone comes and asks me, I'm the same way today because there's a big sandbox. There's not one piece of pie we're trying to cut. We're actually creating more pie. We're expanding the market together. So he shared with me what to do. So I picked up a pickup and a 55-gallon drum I put in the back, and I got the supplies and started, knocking on doors and sealing driveways. And for someone that, for $75 where they don't have to buy the supplies or do the work, but I'll come in and do it and it's all done. It was a no-brainer for them. And then I just started taking my prices up till I started getting some no's. And then I started to find that sweet spot. And I would do that on the weekend. And that gave me all the extra spending cash I needed to get through usually to the next week.
So those were definitely the early days in your entrepreneurial journey. But would you say that you had dynamic pricing even back then? Or in your current business, you probably don't. But back then, I've heard of some companies that will, depending on the neighborhood, how the house looks, maybe charge a higher rate or a lower rate. Did you have any tactics like that to try to boost revenue?
Yeah, that's a great question. I still, every now and then I get what I call a zip code bid. If someone will come out to my place and give me a bid for something, I'm like, do not zip code bid me. Do not look the size of this house. Think that the farm roommate won't wake up and duct tape this together other than pay a ridiculous price. Well, two things I learned during that driveway selling business sticks with me today. First thing I did is I brought someone on and said, hey, I'm going to do the ceiling. I want you to go door to door because while I'm already here, we're already in the neighborhood. The cost of everything to get us that point is there. Any additional sale is more profitable for us. We're not paying gas to get there. We already have our supplies. Everything's there. Start knocking on doors. And he wasn't making any sales. And I said, well, here's what I said. I said, well, I'll do the ceiling because I do a great job of sealing. And that's a lie. I just didn't want to sell. I didn't want to get rejected. I didn't want to knock on a door. I didn't want to have to go through that explanation. And that business would not have survived if I would have done that. This was a squeegee pudding material on a blacktop. It's not brain surgery. So I'm like, hey, buddy, his name was Doug Smith, great guy. I'm like, hey, buddy, you weed whack it, you blow it off, and I'm going to go sell it. And I started selling, and that's when a little pricing came into is instead of giving them a price, like, what are you willing to pay to have this done today while we're here? And then we would go into, I can't tell you what we're charging your neighbor, but I can give you a bit of a discount if you'll start with this today. And it gave me a chance to interact directly with the customer. What I took away from it is this: if you're not willing to get out there and sell your business, if you are not going to be the one that is going to be in the harsh winds of competition, you might not want to be in that business. Not that you have to sell forever, but right there at the bloody tip of the spear is where your business is made. And if you don't know what's going on, and if you're not embracing the reality of that, you're eventually not going to be in business. So that's gone with me today. The first people that I talk with in my company to find out how are things going is I get right to those people that are grabbing that phone and those point of contacts. I'll say, what are you hearing? What made them call us? I also go to the people that are monitoring our retention and say, who left? Why did they leave? What else could we do? I need you to follow up with them and find out what we could have done different. Is this a natural progression? Is there something else? Those 2 points will never change. And everyone else in the business is built around supporting them. And so right out of the gate, I was like, I don't want to go sell. Nobody wants to go sell. Nobody wants to go sell. That little bit amount is going to make the difference, whether you're going to do it or not. And the amount of work people will put around, whether it's their brochures or their website or their brochures. I haven't done that for you. We used to put flyers out. And I said, I'm not printing brochures anymore. Like all these activities I was doing and all this expense was because I didn't want to go and knock on a door when I was physically there and say, I'm already in the neighborhood. I can do yours at a discount. And I will find at times now where we're building another landing page or we're starting another channel or, we have to build a little bit more momentum in this. I'm like, are we looking for brochures instead of knocking on the door? I mean, let's not avoid this. And people do not want to get that rejection. I always thought that as I would get older and more mature, that rejection would get a little bit less. Nobody wants to get rejected. Nobody wants that. I don't want to lose. I don't want to hear that I lost a client. I don't want to hear the client didn't want to start. Nobody wants to hear that. But if you face that and you better yourself every time you hear that, you're going to grow. You definitely will grow. So that was some of the best lessons that I got that I wouldn't have had if I wouldn't have ran that simple driveway sealing business.
And I'm sure you had a lot of lessons that you learned in your next business as well, which I believe you grew to a really decent size or big size, and then it kind of evaporated overnight. Are you able to share a little bit on that business and maybe some lessons you learned there?
Yeah, there were 2 of them. There was one of them, what I had done, it was a professional services business, and I was in the midst of all of it. So starting from scratch, I was part of every bit of it. And I had a really hard time getting staff in and delegating and getting things done because nobody could do it as good as me. All right, let's not unpack, first of all, how arrogant that is and how wrong that is and just the control issues from it. But as we would continue to grow, when you're convinced that no one can do it better than you and they're not going to do it with the passion that you do or they're not going to care as much as you, when you start from that, when things go well, it just reinforces this, See, I can't leave. I've got to be right here. I have to do this. And you get trapped in this system and you're trapped in the middle of it. And there's really no way out because you can't delegate to anyone because even when you bring them in, you're having them watch you do it. And then you're observing them doing it. And then you're critiquing them. And if the assumption is you'll never do it as good as me, that person will never get there and will totally disincentivize them. And then we got to a point where one of my kids had a health condition and I had to move. And that's how I ended up here in St. Louis. And so we had to up and move and I had to physically leave that business. So if I was the hub that everything spun around and the hub came off, let's see what happens. And what happens is it wobbled until it fell apart completely. But I was at a point then where, and with this condition, I needed to build the next business without me being the hub. So from there forward, I was never going to put myself in the middle. And the current business we have now, I wasn't going to start it until I found who was going to run it. That was Dave. And I knew I wanted to run it. I was actually waiting to start it until, are you ready yet? Because I'm really ready to launch and let them run it. Now, the reality is the things he's doing, he's so much better at than me. Best operations guy I've ever seen, right? Got another right-hand guy, Cody, that his pace of learning is 10x mine. And I'll be asking him something like, I really want to look into this. And he's already got resources. He's looked into it. Actually, sometimes they're already deployed for me. And so it's interesting. The reverse of what I believed was true is that it takes me to do all these things was opposite. It takes the right people empowered and they care as much about this business. They run it as if it's their own. And before, when I was trying to control everything, I felt like I was alone. It's opposite now. I don't feel like I'm alone at all. I feel like when I go there, I need to bring my A game because I have people that are committed and working hard and they're pulling that rope. I have to grab that rope and pull with them.
Just for context, when you had the business that failed and you moved to St. Louis, how old were you and how many kids did you have at the time? I think today you have 9 kids, 1 grandchild, correct?
We do, yeah. So let's see. Alex was just born, so that was going to be 2001. So I had 4 at that time. And then the business was successful until I moved. And then when I wasn't there and thought I could manage from remote, then it wobbled and fell apart. So then I had to start over again here while I was here. That was 2001. And then I ran that business up until 2012 and then started this business. It'll be 10 years ago in December. So,
okay.
And then 6 kids and recently married with 3 bonus kids. So we have 9 and a grandchild. And that's a lot, but it's all good. It's a lot of great energy and they're all great kids. So no complaints.
So when you were in the middle of, raising 6 kids, which I believe a chunk of it you did alone, and you were building up a business or, trying to pick up the scraps from the other business, how many hours were you dedicating to the business, to family? Where did you have any time for yourself at all?
I did have time for myself. The biggest lesson that I had from when I was so involved in the business was there's a best and highest use that I can deliver for the business. And when there's a start time and a stop time, then I can get it done in that time frame. Now, think how hard people work before they go on vacation. They want a clean desk. They take on things they normally don't want to take on. They find it, they just don't want to come back to it anymore. I worked every day like I was going on vacation. I didn't know with my situation if I would have the time the next day or not to be able to be in the office and do the things I needed to do. It was just the nature of the way that my life was at that time. I worked every day to make sure that I got the ball across the line, because if I didn't get that done, I might not be able to pick it up for a few days. So for me, I still work in that way. The level of intent is very high. And I question whether that's good, whether that's healthy, and whether that's easy to work with. The guys that work with me most closely know that, and they're prepared. It doesn't matter if we start at 11 and we end up going to 1. They just bring protein bars, and they know that they just eat. We just go, and there's no, it's 12 o'clock. There's no union whistle blowing, and we're going. We're going to go. So I still work with that level of intensity. And that I have to have a finality at the end of this meeting. And at times that will make me make decisions that are premature to be made. They may be right, they may be wrong, but for me, it was getting things across before that deadline. So those are some of the things I'm working on now, is working on some of the longevity of that thought process and allowing some things to evolve over time as opposed to the finality of it. But I do not regret. What came with me was that level of intensity of when it's time to go, let's go. Like, fully engaged, all resources available. Let's give this everything that we need so that when we left nothing on the table.
Working like you're going on vacation is such a great point, because that I totally resonate with that. I'll have, days where I'm working until midnight to try and wrap things up before I go away for a few days. And it would be such a superpower if you can have that intensity day in, day out. Do you have that intensity just as a result of the person you are, or did you have to develop that intensity even after, the farm life and the first few businesses?
No, yeah, good question. What came for me from the farm and from my family is you do your work. I mean, if you're not a good worker, that's an insult. That's not, and you don't want to be that guy. So learning that hard work is so important. But the intensity of it came from the situation I was in, where it wasn't just, I have to finish today because I'm going to be gone. I have to finish today. I don't know if I'll be in the next few days. And that adds an urgency and sometimes an intensity that at times can be good, at times are not. And so that situation caused me to be hyper-focused in that. And that's one that's hard to dial down, because when I'm in and I'll start working, I don't eat, I don't drink. I'm just focused and moving through. And the people that work at not a normal pace, but a reasonable pace, and they're thinking things through, and the rest can get to be drinking from a fire hose, and you lose some effectiveness at some point. Now, the people that work most closely with me, we have a set agenda. We know what we're going to tackle. I can tell when their cup is full and to get out of their way. I'll let them tell me when they're ready next. There's we've worked out a really good workflow. But to me, I know I can see the benefits and, the bugs in the future portion of that. But yeah, when you live in that situation where you're not sure, you need to get things to the point. You have to create your own surety. And that assurance comes from, I need to get this done and I'll touch it next, which is very different than I'm going to pick it up tomorrow to move it forward in the best way. And I'm hopefully now we're making better decisions.
Sure. So with Mantality, from day one, you did not work in the business. You strictly worked on the business. And that was a decision you made based on your prior experiences. So from the first location, I'm assuming you started with one. It wasn't 2 or 3 at once. From the first location, what did that structure look like versus today in terms of direct reports, maybe number of employees, which, by the way, I find it fascinating, the way you handle your number of employees as well. You don't necessarily know or care how many you have, if that's
right.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. I'm no Jerry Jones here. I don't know the whole roster and calling people in and out. I've got people that make those decisions and I trust their judgment and they have full, P&L authority to make those decisions for their team. It's interesting. We were in an industry that was, or we had one product mix. I focused very much on try to be laser focused, small product mix, go after a clear clientele. If the margins are there and you can reach your clientele, you've got a really, you've got some strong operations you can build and scale. Downside of that is if certain things change or those products are no longer available, you can have an issue. So being quick to pivot and add more products and add more services when they go out is what we will do. So I won't mind having a dip and then plug some products in and go versus having a large product mix because it's cumbersome. I want to feel like I'm driving a Corvette or sports car that I can whip around in as opposed to a big semi like I need a couple exits here to slow down and turn. So building a company of scale in which you have either that nimbleness or the diversity is where you're going to get security for your people is one of the major things that we try to do. And then as far as, so to tell you that we had a business where that product was going out. And what I did is I physically built a wall down the middle of that, not a virtual wall, a physical wall down, different entrance, and started this business in that space. Now, in that one, I put my best person there. She is to start. She is one that figures it out very, very quickly. And she still is one of our top producers or our top producer today. She's just consistent. Put her in there and we have to figure this out. And by we, it was a royal we, I'll be here. I'll answer phones. I'll support you. But we're going to talk constantly all through the day and start to figure this out. And we did. And once we'd figured that out and things were running smooth, then the guy that was going to run the larger organization of scale, and his skill is scale. Her skill is I can turn this into a business. His is I can turn this into a scalable business. So he went and observed it with me, walked through it, and I was like, this is what I want you to run. I think you're the guy to do it. And he and I have worked before together. We worked great together. So then he came here to St. Louis, and then he started within here, and he did all the hires, and he's handled it from there on out through the growth. And then from there, he's added, up to the 7 states and our locations and our virtual and all those things. So just phenomenal job.
Do you think if you didn't make that hire or bring on that person, you'd be able to scale yourself to where you are today?
No, I don't. Knowing what I'm good at and what I'm not, and I feel like I can do almost anything. I have one good round of golf. I'm like, I could maybe go pro. Every person's got a little bit of that. I know what I am good at and my unique purpose. And then I try to stay within that. But also, when you can recognize the skills that someone else have and you give them the authority, the freedom and the authority to do the things they need to do, they can really scale that. So no, it's not a skill set that I have. It's not one that I don't feel I would be able to develop. If I could, I don't even know if I would, because to me, that does not excite me. I mean, taking and organizing it and structuring it where it can grow like that, that's something that's easy for him and simple for him. And it creates, not only does it create a lot of jobs, it creates great jobs. And he's one that does a phenomenal job at that, because for me, sometimes when an employee will tell him well, I'm going to go take this to Kevin, he's like, I wouldn't do that. He's like, I'm protecting you from, you don't want to have that conversation with him, is really what it is. Like he does a phenomenal job at that. So recognizing the people that do it, that can do those things, and putting them in place and giving them the authority, truly give them the authority, let them run it, and they'll get it done.
So even with, giving folks on your team full authority, you still will talk to people on their teams occasionally to get a feel for what's happening on the ground?
If need be, but for the most part, it's going to be around the marketing piece. The slot that I fill is our marketing message and making sure that our key products are reaching the key people. That if I were ever hireable for an organization, that's where I would spend my time, in the messaging and how do we blend this messaging all the way through the organization, and so that whatever we tell them initially, they're going to feel every step of the way in through it, as long as they're with us and out the door. We want to make sure that entire experience. So I help with those portions of it, how we wrap the message around those things, and then they deploy it and they get it done. So that's the point that I serve within the organization. That is what I feel is I can do best. And outside of that, everything else is hired, outsourced, and someone else takes care of for us.
And that ties in, I think, to your 3-step process for maximizing leverage. Mm-hmm. KPIs are a big piece of that. What types of things are you measuring on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis in your company?
Probably less than you think. So if you're looking at, when I was driving here today, of which I was 5 minutes late, so I had failed, there's 3 things you look at. You look at the speedometer, you look at your fuel, and you look at your clock. Do I have the gas to get there? Am I going fast enough to meet the time that I need? Those are the 3 that we watch. I always look at our client acquisition cost. That's number 1. That, to me, is the fuel. If I can acquire clients at the right cost, I can almost draw a straight line into what our revenue is going to be. And I've always told Dave, who runs it, if I make the phone ring, what tells you how long we've done this phone ring, if I can make the phone ring, can you make it profitable? And it's a pretty simple math equation. So for us, client acquisition cost is a big one. Next one we look at is our client retention. What's the time frame that they spend with us? And then third, I want to know people that exit. What were the reasons why they exit? Those are the 3 things that I watch on my dashboard. And then other people have other things they watch on their dashboard, and they've got, we try to win the year. So there's times they'll have a quarter, it might swell or shrink, but year over year, they want to be able to see the increase that they need to be able to see. 23 to 29%. We want to see growth year over year. And they have the authority to be able to do that. But those are the things I watch in that dashboard. Those are the KPIs for me that let me know where we're going. And it's back to the driveway ceiling on the knock on the door. I need to know every day what's happening in the marketplace with how we're perceived, what the market needs, how we're perceived, and are we giving them exactly what they need?
I feel like one of the reasons, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you're able to limit the number of KPIs you're looking at yourself is because of your cash management strategy, which, to be honest, I borrowed a lot from you after that conversation. You take your portion of the company's cash flow from the top line. Is that correct? I know exactly what our profit margins need to be, and I pull that out almost immediately. So let's go back to the vacation. You go on a vacation, you got 4 days. You get to day 3, what do you start looking at? What have we not done that we wanted to do? You're starting to ration the time that you have and the fun you wanted to have, and then what's it going to cost? You're kind of moving these things around. If you take and dump all of your cash in one bucket, and then this goes to payroll, this goes to marketing, this goes here, the owner gets what's left. And that is not, what's going to be left? Nothing. And where'd it go? I don't know. And in years past, we had run into that where we're finding we've got stockpiles of inventory. We've got a year's worth of inventory over here. Much of it will go bad. Some of the products aren't even going to be available down the road. They're not going to be viable down the road. So our cash is left in waste. So if we know exactly what our percent profit is going to be for the company we're going to pull out, I'm taking that out. And then what's left is going to be allocated to the departments that they're going to be able to spend what's left. So here's what you have for the month. And so what is that based on? That's based on the clients that came through. Knowing what clients came through, we know what our supplies are going to be, and we look at our fixed costs are going to be our rent, our electricity, and even our employees. So other than that, we know about what's going to be allocated. They're allocated to them, and if they run out,
let's have a conversation when you run out, because one of us is running out. Either I'm running out or you're running out. But if I run out, nobody has a job. If you run out, we can look at, is there a hiccup in the system? We can have a valid conversation. Hiccup in the system? Are we missing something our clients need? Did a cost go up of something? Those are the vital conversations we need to have that are never had unless somebody runs out of something. And then suddenly have a valid conversation. But the main way that I look at my business that I have found that most entrepreneurs don't, and this might not apply to yours or to other businesses, but it certainly applies to mine, is when I evaluate the business, I look at everything's expense. I take my marketing budget, I pull it out, and I put it above my revenue. Because most of the time when people look at my P&Ls, they zero in on, why are you spending so much on marketing? The only purpose to have your rent, your employees, your supplies is so you can churn. What's the capacity that they have? How are you going to fill that capacity? So what makes my company an investment for me is I can put $1 in at the top and I should see $1 plus my profit margin come out through the bottom. If you're getting a good return, 10, 12, 20, 30% return on the dollars you put in the top, how much do you want to put in the top? The answer is as much as the system can handle. And so if you look at your marketing as your investment and everything else is an expense that churns through, I'm really looking at what dollar do I put in the top and how much comes in the bottom and what's the churn in between. And for us, it's a short lifespan through there. So $1 up here, within 180 days, I can start to see some of that come back so I can churn that back into there. But I'm amazed at how many people will focus on that. Like, oh, I shouldn't have to spend that much on marketing. I'm always looking for efficiency of marketing with what our cost per client acquisition. But if I'm still getting an above market return with what I'm putting in, I'm going to keep putting it in until someone shows me that unless the numbers tell me I could get better returns somewhere else in some other investment. But for me, that makes this an investment for me and not just an expense. I don't see any other reason to have a small business unless you can leverage it up. And the way for me to leverage it up is through marketing. But that's also because I'm CEO that came out of marketing. So I'm always looking at, I go into businesses and I solve problems through sales. I solve problems through growth, from top line growth. But people that are good managers they're going to find it through efficiency through the rest. So the team that works with me, we work really well together because I'll fill through the top and these guys are great at efficiency. And realistically, if you run the numbers on this, you will find that a minor tweak in efficiencies down through here has a much bigger impact on your bottom line than adding more through the top. But that is my skill set, and that is what I'm going to bring, and I'm going to let them get more efficiency through the rest. And there are times I'm like, how did you get this much profit out of that? I didn't expect that. And of course, I turn around and say, that's great. I can spend more per lead, right? So There's that good natural tension that you should have with people advocating for each of those. And they're like, I think we can get more efficiency out of marketing. I'm like, let's do that while we continue to get the return, the above market return until there. We're not going to stop. We can do it in addition to. And I agree. Let's get that efficiency, but let's also, while it's working, let's get the hay in the barn.
In order to operate like that, you must have a very transparent organization. So can everyone in your organization on a management or leadership level view the P&L for the entire organization? And then they will request that, hey, Kevin, can you invest another couple $100,000 into Cleveland because we think we can turn that into X? Is that the way it's kind of operating?
Yep, absolutely. And usually what comes up happening is I come in, I'm like, I'm getting a great return. Can we open 3 more sites? Right. And so then they're trying, all right, well, where's the capacity? Who do we hire? How do we do this? Because that lands on them to find the people, train the people, put them in place. So I can outspend and outinvest what they can put in infrastructure. And so there's that natural tension of, all right, we can put a few more up, but they might not be as efficient as we need early on. And so we pull those out. We track them separately. So it doesn't bog down the numbers as a whole, but as soon as it retains back to that profitability and it pays back that initial loss of initial CapEx investment, then we're able to bring that back in and then it grows. And then they're bonused, our team is bonused on the overall operations. So you can have a tough quarter because you're investing. We've made some tweaks and we're investing, but another division can have a great quarter and you're going to benefit from that. So we get a lot of team cohesiveness from that, but we also get a lot of growth because they have certain ones have different skill sets, even though they have the same role, different skill sets, and they support each other within those roles.
This episode is brought to you by Storyboard Living. We're actively buying apartment communities in the St. Louis region, Southern Illinois, and Southern Missouri. We make transactions easy, and we've never gone under contract on an acquisition that we didn't close. We also offer a finder's fee and broker's bonus for off-market deals. If you have a property that may be a good fit for us, email deals@storyboardliving.com. That's deals@storyboardliving.com. So are your scorecards then heavily focused on profitability per department and team member?
No, we use a book called 4 Disciplines of Execution. Okay. And it's an excellent book. And you set a wildly important goal. You have transparency. And the wildly important goal is what's the 1 or 2 things that would move the organization forward the most? Like what is the 1 or 2 things, whether it's over the next quarter, whether it's over the next year, let's name what one of those 2 things are, but it can't be more than 2 for us. We name those, we put a disproportionate amount of energy on those items. Like we're going to focus on it. Like the house is on fire. What do we need to grab out of the house to go? Disproportionate energy on those. Third is going to be that you have a scoreboard that's transparent that everyone can see. So if I wouldn't have seen my clock or my speedometer, I think I'm getting there, but based on what? So transparency of the scoreboard. What's important about that is everybody has to agree, not just what we want to grow, what's that number? Like if I want to get to Raj's and I want to get there on time, I need to go 72. Well, how are you going? Well, I'm going fast. Are you going 71? Yeah, you're not going to make it. You're going to 73. You might have a little bit of a cushion. Agreeing on what that number is so that people know, so that people aren't rewarded for hard work, they're rewarded for results. We need to be a culture of execution. So that third one of a very transparent and negotiated scoreboard of what exactly is success going to be. And the last is tie rewards specifically to those WIGs. At times, and we pick those as a group. At times, we pick what we think is going to move the organization forward the most, and we don't pick the right ones. But I have yet to have a time with whatever one that we pick that we put disproportionate energy on that we don't hit. It's when I say we, I have very little, if nothing, to do with that. It's just communication, agreement, and execution. And for us, that's been a really, that book has been one we've used for years. It's a simple read. It's very easy. But early on, we would bring the tablets down the mountain like, here are your WIGs. No, we as a team have to decide what's going to move it forward. Because even if you have one that's really important, that this metric moving is really going to change this company, but other people aren't on board, you get a lot of, this on the outside, the inside, they're doing this. And you can literally have, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, and I hope you don't, where your team is kind of in, but kind of rooting or not really. Like people buy into what they create. So getting that where, what is that WIG that we need to hit? If I had a secondary WIG, but I had 100% buy-in, I'd take that over the one that I think would move the company further the most. Because even if I want to move it forward the most, if I can't get everyone on board or I don't have agreement, then it's not going to move the company forward. We're going to focus on something that I don't have full buy-in on. So each one of those things, getting clarity, making sure it's the right one, and making sure that we do move it forward. The scoreboard, there's a lot of magic in the scoreboard that everybody can see the scoreboard. You can see it each individual site, and you can see it summed up together. If that's out there and it's broadcast and it's on the wall and every office is in the green with on target as they get there, but you're in the yellow, nothing needs to be said. There's yellow, then there's red, and there's green. They know they're in the yellow. People can see they're in the yellow. No one wants to be in the yellow, and they get themselves up there. So tying those things together, and that book has been a very good one for us for an operational system.
I made a note to buy the book. One thing that I've noticed from successful people like yourself is whenever someone makes a book recommendation, they buy that book. No questions asked. And you actually did it the first time we met. I don't even remember what the book was, but as I was talking, you had already ordered it on Amazon. And I think that just kind of speaks highly to your growth mindset or the growth mindset that maybe a lot of entrepreneurs have in general. It actually ties into a point you made earlier regarding, the sandbox that we all play in and having the abundance mindset of that sandbox being big enough for all of us. I think that's a very American mentality to have. I think in a lot of other countries, and I could be wrong, there's more of a scarcity mindset. Like if you do well, maybe that's taking away from me if we're in the same industry. So I'm glad you made that point. I feel the exact same way in my industry as well. You mentioned sprinting, measuring, and then assessing in a previous conversation. So how involved are you in the sprinting, measuring, assessing in terms of, I know you're not daily involved in the operations, but you're looking at KPIs, you're setting the overall strategy and direction for the company. And then is it really the team that pushes and then you're assessing?
Actually, I'm like a conductor.
Okay.
And everybody is playing their instruments. And so we just did an annual retreat in July. We set what we want to have happen for the year. And I facilitate that, getting input from all of them. And interesting, I have some targets that I want to hit, but when we start to facilitate and see where they think they can hit, their targets are always past what I would have set. So had I gone and said, here's our targets, here's what we're going to do, and brought the tablets down the mountain, the first thing I would have done is limit them. And when someone would tell you, Raj, like, hey, I don't think you can do this, or I expect this from you, and it's less than what you can do, doesn't create a great feeling for you nor synergy with the person that said that. So to start with, we say, hey, what can we do as a team? And we get that agreement from them and they buy into it. And realistically, as a leader, your job is to help facilitate, expand areas and bring everyone on the same page. So like, hey, this is what we're capable of. This is the size of the market. We have this much of a slice. If we want more, I think you can do it. Tell me what your thoughts are. So we set that for the year. And then we have quarterly updates. And that's when we evaluate it. So every quarter I get the update and then I facilitate a quarterly meeting. And all I'm doing is giving my perspective from that, more from the market view from the outside, but hearing their perspective from the ground up, just to help everybody find the right, sound, right? We got to get that right, strike that right tone between where we want to go based on how I can see the field, but based on what's really happening on the bloody tip of the spear within our organization. So quarterly, I do that, and then they set their goals, they set their targets, they adjust their wigs accordingly, and then they do that next sprint. So every quarter they will do that. And in 13 weeks, they can move the needle. One thing that I changed this year with an annual retreat is we were growing in quarter sprints, which we had some growth, but there were times that we were winning the quarter, but we could have really crushed the year. And we would always have progress to look back year over year, but that just happened to be 4 quarters that had added up. So we looked at, all right, what happens if we do a 3-year sprint and we break that up into 12 quarterly sprints? You run differently to win that 3-year marathon. We started to make that tweak this year with that annual retreat. And I'm seeing a difference in the mindset. I'm seeing a difference in the focus. I'm seeing we're going to get measured how we get to the end. And so you have time to prepare yourself. You have time I don't mind if I have a bad week or a bad month. Here's why I had it. Here's what I'm doing. If it's creative destruction of we moved some clients out that weren't good, we got rid of some products that were a burden and not profitable. So our top line took a bit of a hit, but watch what happens in the next 2 quarters. That's what I want to see. And they have the authority to do that if they're trying to win the year or win the 3 years versus just trying to win the quarter. And getting them to have that line of sight and that long-term thought process of it is what we've shifted to more now.
It sounds like a lot of the burden of really making things happen falls on team members, managers, leaders, which I think is a great strategy. Like you mentioned, if they're really buying in and they're involved in creating the vision, they're more likely to work towards it. How are you incentivizing team members to stay? If they're as valuable as they sound to me. Are you offering any profit sharing, equity, anything along those lines?
Yeah, we do profit sharing with them, and we do all open book. And again, we profit based on all the organizations as a whole. So even when we start some of our virtual markets, some of our people in brick and mortar are going to benefit from that. And they, of course, help in many ways, sometimes through training, sometimes through overflow, but more of just being part of our process and being part of the team long term. I think a lot of times, if we're just looking at bonusing people, using cash as that own reward, there's a couple of things we pin ourselves in on that. The number one reason that people are with you is because they're looking for meaning. They want to spend their time doing something that matters. And I just had heard a recent survey where they were surveying, what are you looking for and what makes you happy? Having meaningful work was very high up there. We're paid for the problems that we solve. We're paid for the time that we spend, but we do this because it means something to us. So the people that are on that table, they truly care. They care about their clients. They care about each other. They care that they do well. As soon as it becomes about the paycheck, they've kind of already checked out. And I think there's enough work out there, and the sandbox is big enough, not just in our industry, but in every industry. Find something where you can feel like, wow, I'm good at this. I enjoy this. I would get up and do this for nothing. I truly enjoy that. And I think every seat at the table we have right now are people that truly love their work. They feel like they're making a difference, and to them, it's a big reward for them. So that's the first part. And it's not my job to sell it. It's my job to describe it. And if it's something they want, they can buy in and go for it. But if we sell that to them, I think we might be, misaligning ourselves with some of our people. Talk about our focus, talk about the difference it makes. And if that resonates with you, buy in. Then from there, they're all big. Everybody runs their own economies. They have their house, they pay for their car, they're making financial decisions, long-term, short-term, all the time. They get it. Should we do something that only gives us 50% profit margin, or should we focus on the 90% profit margin item, which we all benefit from? And then we talk about it. Sometimes they're like the 50% margin one, half those people take the 90%. Fair enough. Then let's measure that and we'll track that. But they get it. They don't want to put effort in where they're not going to reward long term. But their meaning of reward isn't always cash. Those 50% margin items, that means a lot. That's 25% of our clients, and that means a lot to them. And yes, they do buy those products, and I get it. We can't be around unless they're getting those products. But I want to hear those things so we don't become a purely spreadsheet-driven organization. The spreadsheet tells us how good we're doing to support the operation so we can keep being meaningful in our clients' lives and our employees' lives.
With that sort of autonomy in your organization, how do you maintain consistency per location? Are you maybe visiting sites regularly, or do you have someone from your head office visiting sites regularly and implementing certain standards? Is there anything like that going on?
Great question. One of the upsides when you have a slim product mix is quality control is simpler, right? The client experience is a little bit easier. You know what to expect. It's boiled down. And early on, and I don't go into industries that are going to be very complex. I just can't keep that many plates spinning. I know that about myself. And so we have a lot of control. The quality control is built into how the business itself is structured. But a lot of that, when you have quarterly check-ins within each one of your team and you all get together, part of what we do is similar to meetings you and I have had, is like, update me. What's going on in your personal life? What's going on with family? How are things coming all the way around? Plug us into your life, and then we'll dive in and start with the work stuff. And what we find most of the time is that if people are having some issues at work, there's bigger things that are going on, and they need us to pick up the slack a little bit. Let us help you out with that. Or, hey, you're taking too much on. Let's, take a step back this quarter. We'll take some of these things on and take a minute and get your feet underneath of you. By doing that, we get a lot of buy-in, and our products are simple. Our services are simple. That when they're dialed in and they're fully engaged, I feel the consistency is there.
That makes a lot of sense. To put together the type of team you have, which is an incredible team, you probably can't pick one of these things, but if you had to pick one, would you say it was as a result of your hiring process or your culture and your ability to build up team members?
Oh, great question. Skills can be taught. skills can be taught. If I resonate with someone and they resonate about the things that I do, they can feel the pain that some of our clients are going through, and they can resonate with them and communicate with them. They're like, yeah, I can help them. If they can carry with them, like, I know what it's like to have a problem that I can't solve. I know what it's like to feel the way that they're feeling. And I can help them, even though I might still not have answers to my solutions. I can help them. If we can resonate with that, we can teach them any skills. And that's what we look for. Because for us, when you're going to be in organizations, like, we are only here to solve that problem. And how much we make and how long we can be here is based on how efficient we do these things. But make no mistake about it, that's why we're here. Those are the people that we hire and put in those positions. And if they can resonate with me on that, then we're good to go. The rest is just skills that can be taught. And but the less we get, the less we resonate with that, it just becomes a job. Now, in any organization, sometimes it's reception, sometimes it's cleaning, sometimes it's draws. It can be many different things. It doesn't take that high level of resonance. It just takes a high skill set and just deliver well, show up and do a great job. And it's a gift for them to be able to show up, do their job, and not feel like they have to live the core values. And this isn't all their life. This is a job. It needs to be a great job, one they can come, do it, go home knowing they did a good job with really clear job description. But the higher you go, the closer you get to the core of what this company is about. You really need to be there, not just to be part of the team, but for yourself to be in a job where you feel like it matters, because your time does matter. You're not getting it back. It does matter. If you don't feel like it provides meaning for you and it makes a difference, don't do it. Find something else you can do.
You're in a profession or an industry that I think is very important, and you're changing people's lives. So it's maybe a little easier for folks on your team to find that, value in what they do. They may hear customers say, hey, you turned my life around. You really improved my life, or the symptoms I was feeling. Do you think it's possible to create that same type of value or environment in an industry that's maybe thankless? Let's say fast food, for example. I know Chick-fil-A does it.
Right.
So I guess I answered my own question there. But do you think it's easier for you because of the industry you're in?
It's simple in this industry I'm in because there's just a direct relationship with it. But I remember a friend of mine that he ran a business that redid kitchens, and he was like, "I do kitchens. What is that about?" And it's hard to get really passionate about that. I'm like, where did you have most of your childhood experience? Where did you have where your mom was talking with you? You come home from school and plate of cookies was there, or family dinner table where you sat and talked. I'm like, this is where life is lived. You're at the point where the kids are going to remember all of these memories. You are building the foundation, that the canvas, that the things that are important to you are going to get painted on. I can't see how you can't see that. So I believe it can within most industry. And if not directly you, if you're in a B2B, that business, empowering that business to be able to do that, I believe it could be. But because I build off of that, I really only seek those things out. But that's an interesting question. I don't know. I see a lot of places for that, but that's because that's the first domino that falls. Because eventually somebody in the kitchens, they got to be good at design, they got to be good at customer service, 1,000 things they have to build that I see that are skills that can be taught. But when this person comes in and says, I want to redo your kitchen, what's driving that? There's a bigger purpose. What's driving that? Connect with that person, make this a good experience for them, regardless of what they buy. So it's a good question, but I see those things as simple, but I have a very limited view on industries and
Sure. So in order to provide the level of service you expect, or in order for team members to do the things you want them to do without being involved in directly in what they do, did you build out processes, procedures for team members to follow? Was that something that kind of organically came as the growth came, or did you hire the team members early on that built those processes as the company grew?
Early on, when we were figuring it out, it was very just starting to build a basket of what worked and what didn't. And 9 things didn't work and 1 did. Then we had enough of a basket of those ideas in there. then we have to take that and like, how do we put this in a place where things can start to be able to run? But the services and the products that we offer, I've got one integrator that Tara, that is the person that runs. I always say, if she can't figure it out, I don't want to be in that business. I like the way she thinks. She resonates specifically with needs. She connects with people's needs. And if people say yes to her, it's for the right reasons. She does not sell. She connects and solves problems. So as she does it, she takes and fills a basket of things in that work. And then we have a couple other people then that take that and put that in an organized, repeatable fashion so that those things can be. And then we kind of regularly update it. But those things all happen organically as they're talking. What's working and what's not? How do we improve it? How do we not? And the more that those key people can communicate, the better. Now, when we were developing that business there, and then we started the one here, her and I would talk after every client encounter. We would talk after every phone call. There was so much we didn't know that we need to immerse ourselves in each one of those experiences. Now, as you move further back away and 10 years later, I'll look at one number and what percent that might change. But make no mistake, if I could have those conversations with every one of them at all times, we would be much further along. It's just not possible to do that. So I do know that when we're going to launch anything new, I want that communication line to be shortened to immediately contacting with that person, especially if it's going to be marketing driven. Are we seeing what we need? Are these the right clients? Can we meet the need? The need that we're saying, that the pain you're feeling, we want to solve for you. I need to know, first of all, can we solve it? We're not going to poke a stick at something that is painful for this person and say, come to us and we're going to solve it if we can't solve it. That's the number one thing we do not want to do. Second of all, is this something that's going to be a good client experience for them? Is it something we can sustain long-term from? I mean, even though we can do this, should we? Is this a product and a service that is going to make this person better, or is this going to be expensive for them? And only while they do it, and eventually they're not going to be able to afford it. So to show them a city on a hill that they can't live in any further is not the right thing to be able to do. So I stay very close to that when we initially launch some of those things, just for that purpose, because I want to know what we can say and what we don't. Because usually it's my voice or my story that's out there, telling them, take that next step. And I don't want to be doing that unless I know that we can see it all the way through.
That makes a lot of sense. One more thing I wanted to touch on was the way you scout locations or territories and decide where your company is going to go next in terms of physical locations. There's a lot of similarities between our strategy and yours when it comes to that. We're looking at markets that are overlooked. We're looking for primarily apartment communities that were mom and pop owned or out of state owned. And that gives us the ability to take, what's maybe operating at a 7 and bring it to a 10. In other words, just operationally improve to increase the NOI. Are you mainly buying existing locations and then putting rebranding to Mantality, or are you going into new markets and leasing or buying a storefront and putting up your sign?
Yeah, if you can buy a business, by all means do it. There aren't any for me to buy. There's enough in the industry where I can't. My wife and I bought the house we're in now, and all we had to go in was add some paint, change the kitchen around a little bit, add some carpet, boom, there we go. If we would have built this house, we'd have to pick every hinge, every door handle, every floor cover. It would have been an arduous process. Well, imagine doing that in all of these markets. You're setting yourself up for just a lot of work. Doing what Darren and I used to do is like, let's try this and start throwing things in the basket that work. If you go in, you have a going concern, you've got an operating business, you can go in very quickly and like, we're going to keep these things, we're going to get rid of these things, and we're going to do that. In fact, one of the things that our top tier people that I start most of those meetings with, if we were to buy this company today, what would we do? Let's remove ourselves from this. And if we were to buy this company today, would we keep this? If we were to buy this company today, would we do this? And that gives us a perspective of, let's not be emotionally attached to things we worked really hard to build because the baby is ugly. If we looked at this, some nine out of 9 people who come through would say, that baby's ugly, it's got to go. So let's start to think like that. So that being said, we have to be able to start those on us because they don't have those to buy. The day there are some to buy, I will be out there purchasing them because the time you save and all of that starting process. My wife and I bought the house in January and we had moved into it by April and had a wedding in May. in the house. You can't do that if you're going to build. Translate that into a business. That's not months, that's years. So not only do you have to start from zero and you just have cash out and you slowly build revenue in, you have that earn back period you have to do. You're buying something, any dollar you put in, you're going to see that return so much faster. So I wish I'm envious that there's some that you can work on and farm and have them come to fruition and you can cherry pick and go on your way. I wish we did, but unfortunately we have to build. And so we drop into those sites and we look for flyover places. I grew up in flyover country and, I was at a conference in New York one time and he saw that I was from Nebraska from the name tag. And he said, well, we got another conference coming up. It's in LA. You do that. I'm like, why tell me why LA? Well, it's, so far from here, I assume you must be close to there. That pretty much told me everything you need to know about being in the flyover. There's a lot of mid-range cities that are overlooked that have this exact same need. And if we can come in efficiently, and efficiency is important to me because then we can offer much better price. The price we want to offer for people so that most any guy can afford this, but that's based on our efficiency. So if we can get into those places and do it efficiently, we can provide those services for them. They don't feel like they're one of the flyovers. And so I love going to those markets and growing up in a place where there weren't a lot of services. I like going and providing them. As long as we can find the right mix of that, I want them to have what they need, down the road instead of a couple hours away.
For us, if we're going to a tertiary market outside of a big city or a mid-sized city, we're looking at, what the big draw is there. Is it a healthcare system? Is it schools? Is it a county seat? Are you looking at anything like that? Or is it strictly maybe population, income?
Strictly population, income, people that are there. And then we have a new strategy in which we're dropping where we drop them in that I can't share yet because we haven't executed it yet. But we're always refining that process to make it a little bit simpler. What I want to do is make a much more push button. If we say, let's go, within 30 days, I want clients to be able to be serviced there. And how do we shorten that process? How do we speed that along to be able to do that? We have licensures and lots of issues we need to work with around that, so that can delay it. But we have some green lights that we can go for, and I don't want to hesitate on those. So there's only a few factors I need to see, which is going to be population, which is going to be, do they have not competition, but do they have the service there? There's lots of places where you don't even have the service. In Cleveland, we were one of the only providers there. And I'm like, Cleveland is not a small town. It is a duplicate of St. Louis, which we have a massive organization in. I'm like, let's get there. These guys need this. So for me, it's part of that. And I don't mind when there's competition in the market because then I don't have to educate them. That education process is an expensive process. I'd rather come in and say, that's great. Those of you that aren't getting the service there for one reason or another, here's how we can provide it for you. Again, the sandbox expands.
Yeah, that's a great mentality to have. In your industry, the education piece is one that I didn't think of, but I'm sure there's a massive learning curve there. I feel like it's probably not a new product, TRT or testosterone, but it's really grown in popularity over the last few years, maybe the last 10 years since you've been in business. I'm sure you guys have played a role in helping the general public to understand and know what the product is. We like to end each show with what we're calling a hole-in-one segment. Your number one piece of advice, and if you have more than one, that's great too, because I know you have a lot of wonderful thoughts, but your number one piece of advice for someone that they can apply today, either in their life or business?
Well, that's a great question. I always skew towards get as close to the harsh winds of competition for the sales of your organization, because the entire organization is sales. All of it is. I mean, you've got the bloody tip of the spear, and anyone that's not out within sales, customer facing with new people delivering our products is the wood behind the spear. And I want them to feel that wood. I want them to feel the weight behind them. Make your organization as close to that as possible, because the internal tension between, salespeople are throwing us bad people and salespeople saying we need better products or you need better follow through, you need better whatever. That internal fighting is a cancer. If you can come to an agreement on we are a sales organization and we are going to have alignment as close as possible that people that are feeling those winds out there of competition and the change in the market can be absorbed and metabolized by the organization as a whole, you will see great changes on both top and bottom line.
And that just goes back to the communication we talked about earlier. If sales is bringing in customers that aren't converting, then it's just that communication between the two departments. Is that correct?
100%. And honest conversation.
Okay.
I mean, and sales will always, in any company, you're going to see sales and fulfillment battle each other. There's two wildly different personalities. Outgoing, eat what you kill, coin operated, but these guys they're the foot soldiers in the front ground doing these things. And they sometimes, at times, will tell the customer there's some features that may or may not be there that they don't have to fulfill on the other end. And that's where the tension can build. But at times, they don't say that. The customer heard that and is trying to make you provide something that was never promised. At the end of the day, you're either fighting against each other or you're fighting the market and negotiating what a good client is, what we're going to provide, what we're not, what we're going to do, and making sure that sales is, collapse that where you are all there with that tip with sales. Nothing can make an organization grow faster than that, because everybody that fulfills the market feels what's going on in the market and they absorb it at that speed. The speed to adapt with that is going to give you the greatest bump in your company.
Kevin, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for all of your experience sharing and wisdom sharing. I definitely learn a lot every time we meet, and I do appreciate it. How can people learn about Mantality, yourself, or even testosterone in general?
Yeah, the best place to learn about Mantality is going to be from lowtusa.com. You can see all of our sites. We have virtual connections. You can chat with some of our experts. We've taken over 23,000 guys at this point we've taken care of. And so you can chat with people that have actually taken care of those guys. So you can get your questions answered, and they can route you to a local provider. They can route you to whatever needs. Just don't wonder if this can help you. Just talk to somebody that's an expert, and our job is to educate you for you to make the right decision. For me, that's just learn about the low T. You learn it there. I'm just in the background. What's important to me is that people get the help that they need and that they connect with the providers. But the team is amazing. They'll answer any questions you have. We turn away a certain percent of people because it's not a right fit. We get them back to their primary care. We catch conditions that people didn't know that were there. It's just important they take that step and find out what's going on.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thanks again.
You got it, buddy.
If you're a high-quality company interested in reaching the high-performing audience of Country Club Conversations, let's see how we can work together. To explore sponsorship opportunities, email advertising@storyboardliving.com. That's advertising@storyboardliving.com.